This is an ad by Regain Couples Therapy and features real testimonials.
This was our first time trying therapy, and honestly, it was long overdue. Looking back, we just wish we had started sooner.
Regain's qualified therapists help couples when they can't get there on their own.
We thought it was intimacy issues, but Andrea helped us uncover a deeper root cause we hadn't even realized was there.
Visit regain.com/couplespod to get 10% off your first month. Regain, couples therapy that works.
This is an ad by Regain Couples Therapy. Let's be honest, loving your partner doesn't mean you always like them, and guess what? That's normal. Regain, powered by BetterHelp, offers couples therapy that's flexible, affordable, and 100% online. Whether you're reconnecting or working through conflict, Regain is here to support you both. See why people wish they'd tried couples therapy sooner. Visit regain.com/couplespod to get 10% off your first month. That's regain.com/couplespod.
Faith, spiritual values, moral issues,
Extend this to tomorrow morning.
government, economy, education, work, responsibility. What we think about these depends on our worldview. Now, VCY America presents Worldview Radio with Brannon House.
Welcome. Glad you're with us on this Thursday, April 17th, 2025. The family as the incubator for good government. I had a great conversation yesterday with Jim Paff. And I said, Jim, this is such a fascinating conversation we're having. We need to have this on our Christian radio stations. And so Jim Paff is going to join me here in just one moment. We're going to talk about a lot of things. Jim has a very full resume, from being chief of staff for Congressman Thomas Massie to working with pro-family organizations. He's a historian. He's a committed Christian. There's a lot that Jim has on his resume that makes him someone that I can pretty much talk to about anything, right? I think you'll pick up on that when we have him on here in just a minute. I think it'll be his first time to be a guest here. Been with me many times on Worldview too, but we want to bring him to the radio side as well. We have a big announcement. We've been working on something for the better part of 2 months, right, Logan? Better part of 2 months we've been working on something, and that is a trip to Washington, D.C. with Logan, Melissa, and I, and one of our camera guys, the one that was walking around with the camera the other night at the Waukesha Expo Center, Michael. Michael's been working with us since he was 17 years old. He's now 40 years old. We're pretty proud of that because we love working with people long-term like that. You get to know them, they get to know us and everything. Everybody just works together well because they're like part of the family to us. And so he'll be going with us and traveling with us. And we have been added to, you ready for this, folks? We've been working on this a long time. We have been added to the White House press pool. We have been added to the White House press pool, and we will be reporting from the White House the first week of May, that Monday. What is that Monday, Logan? That Monday, is that the 5th of May? I think?
Yeah.
We'll also be on Capitol Hill. We have all the necessary press passes. We'll be on the House side for interviews in the morning, Senate side, interviews in the afternoon. We already have confirmed members of the House, members of the Senate we'll be doing interviews with. And then, like I said, we'll be over at the White House a few times during the week that we're there as well, reporting from the White House inside the gate. I guess if there's a press briefing, our passes include that. We'll go into there and be a part of that. So we're doing this because you guys asked for it. You guys wanted this. We get a lot of people asking, when are you guys going to D.C.? When are you going to do this? When are you going to do that? And so we're going to do that. You guys know I'm not big on traveling. I really do like my schedule day in, day out to be the same. Dolly and the dogs like their schedules to be the same too. That's very common for dogs. They like the same schedule. And this old dog here likes the same schedule day in and day out for the most part as well. But I'm going to get outside the studio, and we're traveling for that week. Now, we have a couple very interesting stops along the way. We won't be telling you until after we've been there. We'll explain why later. And we also will be stopping at a lot of historic places. We have been working with the National Park Service. And I have to tell you something, folks. The National Park Service has been so responsive and professional and friendly and punctual. I wasn't expecting that. It is the government, right? And every time we talk to them, they're friendly. You can hear the smile in their voice. My wife had said that because I do all my calls on speakerphone because I don't want that cell phone up to my head radiating my brain. I don't need any more damage up there. And my wife, when I've hung up a couple times, says, boy, they sure are sunny personalities. I said, they are. They're just as friendly as can be, aren't they? And punctual, and emails get returned. And when you call them, you can get them on the phone if you know the right numbers to call, right? Which we do. We finally track those numbers down. And everybody in the National Park Service has been so generous and kind and welcoming. And so we finished up early this morning from our Northern Illinois temporary studio up early this morning. And we finished up the process for all the paperwork we have to fill out. And we now have passes from the National Park Service to be able to go to a lot of the monuments, okay, as a professional filming crew. I mean, I guess you guys, anybody can go there pretty much, I guess, right? And probably take your phone or camera along and film. But when you're traveling with 3 or 4 people and you've all got cameras, it starts to get a little suspicious. Like, I think you guys look like you might be a media outlet. Where's your pass? Where's your press pass? Where's your paperwork? So we didn't want to do that. Now, I'll tell you, a lot of the rules have changed because now people have such nice cameras that are 4K, 5K, whatever they are now. So a lot of the rules that used to be you had to get a permit for this and a permit for that, that's changed because they know that the average citizen now has all this, right? But when you're traveling with 2 or 3 cameras and 2 or 3 people that are camera people, that sends off pretty much a sign to a National Park Service ranger that this is a professional media group. Let's go check and see if they got their permit. So I said, look, I even said to the National Park people, I said, look, we would rather just have permits because we don't have time to have a confusion on the ground once we get there. Our time is so limited. So we would rather just go ahead and get the permits and pay for them. So we paid the $900. We paid the $900, but that gets us throughout the week and the paperwork throughout the week to go to the Jefferson, the Lincoln, the Washington Monument, the Vietnam Memorial, the World War II Memorial, Iwo Jima. We've got a long list, and we have all the permits now to go as a professional crew. And what we're putting together is more programming that is telling the history of America. Pro-America, patriotic, historical presentations. I was talking to a friend of mine today, a retired military colonel, and he knows what we've been working on for the last few months because we talk to him frequently. And I said, I think a lot of some of these historical sites, I won't name them, are kind of run by leftists now. And 2 different people, unbeknownst to each other, told me, well, if you're going to try to go to this place, one of the homes of one of the former presidents, 2 people independently of each other said, you know they're run by leftists, right? And I said, no. The first person, I said, no. The second person said, yeah, I was just told that the other day by someone else. And do you know what we're finding? We are finding that some of these places where we try to go, they look up who we are, and they're really friendly with us, and they're willing to be accommodating until they go to our website and they see that we're Christian worldview news and information. All of a sudden, the door closes. A lot of these sites are run by leftists. Isn't that horrible? The leftists have taken over so many of these historical homes of former presidents and whatnot. Or they're afraid due to political correctness or whatever to let a group like us onto the grounds to film and in a professional media capacity. Now, again, many of you can go with your beautiful 4K, 5K iPhones or whatever and film all day long. But again, we try to go by the rules, dot every I, cross every T, and be straightforward and honest. And so we fill out paperwork, and we, like I said, we want to do that. But it seems as though when you do that, sometimes you're going to get an answer of no when they find out you're coming from a Christian worldview conservative area. And the retired colonel I was talking to this morning said, do you know that the History Channel, they don't seem to run a lot of the programs they used to run. He said, I had to go join their version of your vault where they archive a lot of their shows. And they don't seem to run a lot of that conservative, patriotic programming about America's founders and history like they used to. And I said, well, I didn't know that, but I know why. You know why, right? He said, yes, because many of these groups are not pro-America anymore in many regards. And so Logan and I believe that there is a need for doing some historical stuff, some historical programming that is timeless. Talking to people about public policy and what's going on is great, but that ages out pretty fast because the news cycle and public policy and everything changes very quickly. But telling the story of our founders and our history and our nation and those sites, that doesn't age out. That's timeless stuff, right? So we're going to be producing some wonderful pieces that we'll be making available to you guys, and we're excited about that, as well as interviewing people on the House side, interviewing people on the Senate side. Again, we have all the permits to set up our cameras and tripods and lights and do that. And then we'll be, of course, in the White House a few days, on the grounds a few days, reporting from there. But other than that, we're going to be hitting a lot of historical sites for filming, and then later producing that into short documentaries and TV specials for you guys to consume. All right. Now, I will say this. We have a motor coach and a driver and professional driver, professional coach that will take the crew and all of our equipment, and that way we can just hop on, hop off, and we're not having to worry about anything but reading our notes where we're going to the next place. I'm going to have to memorize a lot of scripts because I don't think they just have electricity to plug in anywhere for a teleprompter on these historical sites. So I'm going to have to memorize a lot of scripts that I'm putting together about this monument, this place, so I can do stand-ups. So we don't need to be worrying about parking and getting where and going where. We get dropped off and they can go park the bus because there's buses everywhere. It's DC, right? Got tourists all over the place, and tour buses. But what we are going to do is, for those of you who are members of our vault at worldviewtube.com/vault, we're going to take you aboard the coach with us, and you're going to go along with us. Most of everything we do, we're going to make available to all of you guys to watch. But some of the behind-the-scenes stuff and what it's like to travel as a crew with 3 dogs and a coach, you guys are going to get some of the behind-the-scenes stuff along the way. My wife's standing behind the camera right now, rolling her eyes. Are you not looking forward to this, babe? She said 3 dogs. Yeah, well, I only bought one of them. Someone else bought the other 2. But you guys will get the you'll get the benefit of that as Vault members. So we're looking forward to it. We have been working on this a long time, but we didn't want to mention it until after our event in Waukesha, because we wanted all of our emphasis to be on that. And now that that's over, we're spending really a lot of our time on finalizing the details of what's to come with this very special trip. All right, joining me before we go to break real quick, I'm going to go ahead and introduce him as Jim Paff. Jim, welcome to the broadcast. And these 74 Christian stations we're on. Hey, Jim. Oh, I'm not hearing Jim. I don't know if Jim is with us or not.
Oh, I'm here. I'm sorry. My bad.
Right. Hey, Jim. No problem. Had yourself muted. That's all right. Welcome to our Christian Radio Network and VCY America. Glad to have you with us.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, and really looking forward to this Easter weekend coming up and celebration of Christ. And thank you, Donald Trump, for emphasizing it this week.
Well, I want to talk about that when we come back from the break. The music's about to play. Computer will take it away. But what a whiplash we've received from, what was it, a year ago? Trans Visibility Day on Resurrection Weekend. That was done on purpose as an insult to people of faith, to Christians. And now we have the White House putting out a statement about the Resurrection Sunday. We have President Trump putting out on social media about Christ dying on the cross and showing his love to the world. We have a speech. We have a speech from President Trump, I think just last night, reading about the resurrection, the cross. What a difference a year makes. We'll be right back.
This is an ad by Regain Couples Therapy. Let's be honest. Loving your partner doesn't mean you always like them, and guess what? That's normal.
Regain offers couples therapy that's flexible, affordable, and 100% online. Whether you're reconnecting or working through conflict, Regain is here to support you both. See why people wish they'd try couples therapy sooner. Visit regain.com/couplespod to get 10% off your first month. That's regain.com/couplespod.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at wvwfoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at wvwfoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at wvwfoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview. All right, welcome back. Glad you're with us. We do have breaking news. Sadly, there has been a mass shooting at Florida State University. I'm going to go to some audio, Logan. President Trump is in the Oval Office with the Italian Prime Minister, but he did address to the media this horrific shooting. We are getting reports that there were two shooters. One is deceased. One has been taken into custody. Now, when you hear about any shooting, obviously your heart goes out to everybody involved, because that could happen to any of us at any time. We all know that, right? And we think of them and the family members, and just your heart goes out to them. But then when I heard about a second shooter, my stomach really dropped, because when you start talking about more than one shooter, you're now talking about something highly planned and coordinated. And again, I'm eager to find out what was the agenda behind this, what were the nationality of the individual involved. Whenever you start hearing about two shooters at one time, that raises even more questions. Listen to what President Trump said just a while ago from the Oval Office.
Thank you very much, everybody. And I've been briefed on the Florida State University, Tallahassee active shooting. I guess it's an active shooter. Fully briefed as to where we are right now. It's a shame. It's a horrible thing. Horrible that things like this take place. And we'll have more to say about it later. Thank you very much.
All right. So they're going to have more to say about it as we get more information. As we're live, we will detail that to you. Let's go back to Jim Paff. Jim, tell our friends that are listening your website for your organization.
Yeah, I'm president of the Conservative Caucus. It's theconservativecaucus.org, and we were founded in 1974 by Howard Phillips. We're the nation's oldest conservative grassroots organization.
Excellent. All right, let's talk about what we touched on yesterday. We'll go several different directions, but first, I guess I should loop back to what a difference a year makes. Resurrection Weekend, the Biden White House declared it as Trans Visibility Day, and now this year, we have the president, the White House, in his official remarks on his social media, bringing the focus back to the death, burial, and resurrection of our Savior Jesus Christ. What a whiplash in 1 year, Jim.
It really is, and I'm so grateful to Donald Trump for emphasizing this week. You know, the American experiment was founded upon the Judeo-Christian ethic. And in fact, you know, we've had a lot of debates in recent years about science and trust of science and all this kind of stuff, and problems with the left and how they've dealt with it. But all scientific progress comes from men and some women, all of whom believed in God and most of whom were practicing Christians. Everything in the West that has been good, that has brought prosperity and liberty and health to human society, has been inspired by the Christian ethic. And it's really satisfying for Donald Trump to recognize this. And I believe, and I was just talking to my wife about this earlier, I really do believe that since the shooting in Butler, Pennsylvania, Donald Trump is more focused on this than ever. He's always been a friend to Christians. He's always worked hard to protect religious liberty and to uphold the First Amendment in that regard in this country and around the world, frankly. But this is just one of those special times when someone so affected by what should have been horrible tragedy, really giving thanks to God for not only the election that took place to save us from Trans Day of Visibility, which is just a horrible pagan idea, and then to bring it forward as a real honoring of God's mercy and grace on this country. Donald Trump doesn't see himself as a central figure in all of this, against the narrative that he's some sort of narcissistic personality. No. He's focused on the American people being strong and serving that end. And I think laying this before the Lord this week has been a fantastic thing that he's done.
Yeah, absolutely. Praise the Lord. I don't know. You're a veteran. I mean, you were the chief of staff on Capitol Hill for Thomas Massie. Your resume is pretty impressive. So there's very little we can't talk to you about. That's for sure. But I do want to ask you if you agree with me that we have got to be ever vigilant, ever involved. We can't say, oh, Donald Trump's been elected, everything's fine. Everybody go back to watching football and doing whatever, hunting and fishing or all these other things we consume. Not that those things are wrong in and of themselves, but let's go back to entertaining ourselves. No. American Christians particularly, who are called to be salt and light, the salt to stop the rot, to be the preservative, the light, the gospel. If we don't stay very active and make sure that the shepherds, the pastors, the real shepherds, the real pastors of America are using those sacred desks. They used to be called the sacred desk, the pulpit. If we're not using this to awaken the American church to what's going on with Islam, I was watching a video today, Islam is spreading in Florida, the mosque being built there. We know what's going on in Texas. There seems to be an absolute concerted effort to take down Texas. If we don't stay awake with the laws that are now in Great Britain, in Europe, I read today about a bill in Great Britain that wants to basically prosecute anyone that hurts someone's feelings or offends them. And I think it just passed one of their houses over there. If we don't stay vigilant, we could see ourselves right back where we were prior to the election of Donald Trump, particularly if we have a lot of voter fraud going on with the midterm elections. Do you agree that if we don't take advantage of this grace God's given us, we could find ourselves right back where we were with the attempt to shut down Christian radio or to limit what we can say on Christian radio, more attacks on parental authority, freedom of speech, freedom of religion? Do you agree with that?
Oh, it's absolutely constantly at risk. Ronald Reagan famously said that liberty can go away with just the next generation at any given time. And so we, as a general principle, we need to be constantly working to assert what our liberties are. We as Christians need to recognize we don't obtain our liberty from the Constitution. We don't obtain our liberty from elected officials. And by the way, we don't get our liberty from the courts either. That's not where liberty comes from. That's not where good government comes from. God is the judge of the universe. He is providential over the affairs of all mankind. He recognizes what countries do, and he will bless or curse them. We read this throughout the scripture that God judges nations, but he also moves the heart of kings. Now, when we consider all that's been happening in this country, we need to recognize as Christians, this is a very real spiritual battle. A lot of people read through Ephesians 6, which talks about the attack of that our weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty in the heavens. We're fighting principalities and powers. A lot of people will read past that and say, okay, yeah, well, I need to go hands off on government because I just need to, live my Christian life and go to church and all that kind of thing, and I can be satisfied. That is not what that is saying. In fact, a very famous theologian, Arthur Kuhlman, wrote an article or a book about the theological basis of what the church's relationship is to the state. And he makes very clear the reality that Ephesians 6 is applicable to what we do in the world. And I believe that too. What is a principality and power? It's some governmental sort of system that's happening in the spiritual realm, in the metaphysical realm. But the reality is that governing principle, in this case negative and controlled by Satan, as outlined in Ephesians 6, has implications in this world. We are called to be light and salt to the earth. That doesn't just mean we preach the gospel, and we should preach the gospel. It means something much more than that. We should be engaged in our culture. And the early church in the first and second, even third centuries, from its beginning on, was butting up against the political culture, the culture in general, and they did it fearlessly with an apologetic, as Peter said in 1 Peter 3, that we must have an answer for those who counter us or go against us in what we say. That needs to play itself out in the public sphere, and certainly it begins in the church, and certainly, our primary focus as individual believers is to keep our hearts right and to build a thriving church where we're at. But it doesn't stop there. The purpose of the church is to train disciples, not primarily evangelism. And those disciples have to go out into the world and provide that salt and light that's necessary. And what the Lord has really moved me toward in my career is to do that in the public policy and political realm, because there are serious ramifications there. I worked for Dr. Dobson. That was his belief as well, too. And much of what he did while he was running Focus on the Family. This is very, very important for us to understand, and a real battle for us to undertake.
Yeah, because if we don't do those things, then Christian radio starts to get shackled. The pulpit starts to get shackled. VCY America, has now got 60 years of broadcast ministry, and we were just doing our rally the other night in Waukesha. We had 1,000 chairs set up, and people were standing. So I guess we were over 1,000 people. Praise the Lord, right? And I stayed at the inn for 2 hours, and it was my joy and privilege to visit with so many of our listeners and to hear personal testimonies of what the VCY America Radio Network and Worldview Radio Ministries have meant to them. That light, that salt, can stop quickly in that medium if we have the government come along and say, well, you can't speak about the issues of the day. That's political, and we don't want you saying things about Islam. We don't want you saying things about the LGBT. That hurts people's feelings. We're now going to fine you, and if you keep this up, we're going to take away your license to broadcast. We may even prosecute you. It doesn't take much. And yet any of us who, and like yourself, Jim, any of us who've been in media, particularly Christian media, knows the power of broadcast. I like to think of the seed being broadcast. You broadcast the seed, and some of it takes root. Some of it, goes into the ground and it produces fruit. And that's what we're doing. We're broadcasting the seed of truth, and we don't know what kind of soil it lands on in the heart, but we know for some it takes. And to lose the ability to put that out is an attack on what we're called for as Christians. And I think that's what you just said, and I agree with you 100%. We got a break coming up in less than a minute. Again, the computer will take it away, so I'll jump in when the music starts. But the family is so crucial to this. The incubator, the family as the incubator for good government. You and I discussed the other day, as we like to talk about here, that when Noah gets off the ark with his family, the right of civil authority was given directly to him and his family. If innocent blood is shed, you have the right to take life, capital punishment given to that family. Civil authority the right to self-defense, the right to defend one's family, private property. All these things are given to individuals. Individuals end up making up families. Families come together individually and make up governments for the purpose of defending individual rights collectively. It's not defending the rights of the collective, it's defending the rights of the individuals collectively, our individual, private, God-given rights. So when we come back, let's talk about the family as the incubator for good government. My guest is Jim Paff, and you're listening to Brandon House, not live, that's at night. You're listening to Worldview Radio, but I am Brandon House, but it's Worldview Radio. Crosstalk with Jim Schneider comes up at 2 p.m. Central on over 100 outlets at vcy.org. Reporting from the Midwest on location. We'll be right back.
If you love to travel, Capital One has a rewards credit card that's perfect for you. With the Capital One Venture X card, you earn unlimited double miles on everything you buy. Plus, you get premium benefits at a collection of luxury hotels when you book on Capital One Travel. And with Venture X, you get access to over 1,000 airport lounges worldwide. Open up a world of travel possibilities with the Capital One Venture X card. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. Lounge access is subject to change. See CapitalOne.com for details.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Melissa and I have been taking Bella Grace, this powerful elixir, since last fall, 2023. The results have been amazing. My hands would crack and bleed, deep cuts and cracks every winter for years. No matter what we did, we couldn't get them to stop cracking and bleeding. This year, I took Bella Grace, no cracking, no bleeding. My acid reflux, gone. Haven't had to take a Pepsid. My hair growth, the last 2 times I had my hair cut, the lady had to use thinning shears on my hair. That's amazing. We've also received incredible feedback from you, our listening audience, and the impact it's had for you. This is loaded with astaxanthin. That's a powerful antioxidant. Collagen, but top grade collagen. Studies show 95% of it is being absorbed in the body because of the way they develop it. Then we have something called cat's claw. That's an anti-inflammatory from a vine in Peru. It's the bark, and it's an anti-inflammatory. There are about 80 clinical trials on Bella Grace. Please get a subscription now and save. MelissaHouseBG.com. All right, welcome back. Glad you're with us. Worldview Radio, our website, worldviewradio.com. We are now getting word that there are at least 5 dead, 6 injured, 1 critical Florida State University shooting. This is fluid. We pray these numbers change and that they go down, not up. But that's what we're getting now. We're even now seeing video footage reportedly from Florida State University shows one suspect opening fire on people running from the student center. So again, we'll keep you up to date on this as well. Jim, before we go to the issue of family and family being the incubator for good government, you have a passage I think you want to talk to us about. Is that right, from the scripture?
Yeah. You know, because when we get to the family and the critical nature of it that we're going to talk about, we need to understand what form of government God really does want. And I've made the argument that God does want limited government. In fact, he might want something close to almost non-government. I mean, we go back to the period of the judges. We go all the way back to Moses himself. And what was the design of government in Israel at the time? It was a system of judges, a requirement that those judges have moral character, and that they just adjudicate disputes between people and or other problems in society through a judicial system. There wasn't a formal king. There were a few little times where briefly there was someone that attempted to be king in the book of Judges, but it wasn't a set of kings. It wasn't a set of government requirements. The only real governmental type organization was the temple worship that existed at the time. And but when Israel came to Samuel, the last judge, and said, we want a king just like all the other nations, Samuel took offense at it. He took it to God, and God's response to him was, Samuel, they haven't rejected you. They rejected me. And what does that mean? It means that God wants a system of government where people seek him first and are responsible to him first. Now, when we get into Romans 13, obviously, there are some modifications of that understanding that are very helpful, because the early church was dealing with secular governments that existed apart from any of their efforts. But in 1 Samuel 8, when God rebukes Israel, he gives them a warning that when you have a king, he's going to take your money, he's going to use your produce, he's going to control much of your life. I mean, when you read that passage of scripture, it almost reads like everything that we're challenged with in the United States right now. I believe our founding fathers understood this principle, and they wanted it to be a very limited government. We spend in the federal government 70 to 80% of what we spend is unconstitutional. When you read Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, what Congress is authorized to spend money on, it goes way beyond those boundaries. I think the founding fathers knew that a limited government, leaving people to their consciences to live their lives, drawing from the Ten Commandments and the understanding of the moral law, that you could have a good nation that would be prosperous and good. And we've had that for most of our history, except for about the last 60 to 80 and really the last 100 years, we've been struggling with a turning away from that principle.
100%. Of course, so much of it, 1913, the Federal Reserve, federal income tax, and the way they have, you go read the Communist Manifesto, the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto, a progressive income tax. Here we are. I did read some good news. It looks like the acting IRS director is going to be a whistleblower, or not a whistleblower, but he's going to be put into the whistleblowers going in at some level, I read today. But I guess they're going to grab a former congressman to be the acting director of the IRS, who I guess is known as being very much for the common man. I guess he is a former auctioneer, among other descriptions, accountant or something in finances. So I don't know what President Trump's going to do with this IRS, but think about what it has done to the family. You talk about the attack on the family, and then you add inflation, the hidden tax, and forcing more and more mothers into the workforce, two parents into the workforce. Some of it, of course, comes down to tightening the budget, not living outside our means, not having to keep up with the Joneses. But, of course, I think a lot of this progressive taxation and inflation to grow the size of government has been in order to force more moms into the workforce so they don't keep the home fires burning and build that incubator that creates children that reflect the moral law, understand the moral law, understand the principles and virtues of good government. I think this has largely been by design. Would you agree?
I think it's the effect, and for some people it is the design, that it has its socialist and even communist moorings, as you rightly mentioned. What has happened is that a federal government that Woodrow Wilson believed, and even FDR after him believed, should be directing how culture works. Both of these men made statements about how the Constitution constrained them from doing what they thought ought to be done in culture. Remember, just after Woodrow Wilson's time, intellectuals in this country were praising Benito Mussolini. This is long before World War II, when the violence and horrible atrocities of World War II took place. He was applauded in the intellectual elites here in the United States for organizing culture in a way that they thought was useful, and they wanted to go to his model. Then it was a complaint that they were constrained by the Constitution from doing so. But what has happened with the income tax in particular is that it confiscates the wealth of all individuals, obviously, but families. They said it was only going to be the wealthy people that were going to be taxed. And then it quickly, within about a 10, 20-year period, it was going down to everybody. When you confiscate that wealth out of families, it almost forces women eventually to need to go into the workforce to make up the difference. So that's been the effect of it. And listen, the communist principles are anti-family, fundamentally at their core. All individuals are the wards of the state in a communist system, and certainly in socialist systems as well, which is only a slight modification thereof. And when you take wealth out of the family, You make it hard to build and form strong families, which are fundamental to any society. Like, this isn't just a principle of taxes. This is just a principle of how societies work. Family is a central structure that provides security, benefit, and future benefits as well by raising children who can do well. And if you've got a married mother and father in the home, it doesn't matter how good the marriage is. If you take out physical and sexual abuse situations in marriages, the social science makes it very clear for 60 years now that a married mother and father in the home is always better for overall outcomes of young children. You still have some percentage that go bad, but 60, 70% on major factors, you tend to have success. That's what families bring to a society. And by the way, last point on the income tax, the reason governments want income tax is wars. I mean, that's really the purpose for an income tax, and getting away from a gold standard, which is the other part of that. Because if they can confiscate the wealth of people, they can fund wars. This is literally the purpose for Woodrow Wilson working to pass the Federal Reserve Act and to get the income tax amendment, 16th Amendment, passed nationally, was for that purpose. And that's it, for the expansion of government and what government wants to do. And at that time, war being really the only expansive thing that they were seeking.
And it seems as though we may have just avoided, according to press reports, a strike on Iran by America and Israel. We'll deal with this more tonight on Brandon House Live with David Pine. But apparently, Pete Hegseth, Tulsi Gabbard, White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, that at least these three people, is being reported, were really advising President Trump against striking Iran. We need to really be praying for President Trump, because I think there are some folks in the White House and around him that really want to go to war, or at least do these things. Now, I know that my friend Aaron Lavarco, our reporter in Israel, who's here in the States, was with us the other night. Obviously, they see Iran as a serious existential threat to the nation state of Israel and are wanting some help on this. I get that. But he also says, I understand where you Americans are coming from, that if you have terror cells, Hezbollah terror cells in the country, thinking that you can strike Iran with impunity without reprisal, is foolish thinking. And I think that's what Pete Hegseth and others understand. This isn't something you can do without provoking Russia, who has said that a strike against Iran is not acceptable. Then you've got China, who is in military alliance with Russia and Iran. And not to mention, if we start getting all up in that business, then China moves in on Taiwan, does a blockade there. We've got chips there. We get further against Iran. We've got pharmaceuticals coming out of there. I mean, we've got a lot of things the American people aren't aware of that require just-in-time inventory infrastructure. So people need to be praying for President Trump, because I think there's a war going on inside the White House as far as the war of ideas. And that's what you're talking about. A lot of groups, they make money going to war. What are your comments on what we're reading in the press today about this?
To pick up on that last point, President Eisenhower was correct in talking about there being a military-industrial complex that really does want to make money off war. Frankly, I believe that's why we went into the Iraq War. Look at how we expanded DHS, how we created it when it was totally unnecessary. We got rid of how we did screening at airports, because it wasn't screening at airports that caused 9/11, and yet people made billions of dollars off that. There is a real desire to make money off government, because there's a lot of money sloshing around when you allow it to do that. But as to Iran, I do agree. We do not need to be dropping bombs on Iran unless there's a declaration of war by Congress. And that's what our Constitution provides for. A president can't start a war on his or her own. They must have authorization from Congress. And I would be totally against such a thing. And thank goodness for people like Pete Hegseth, Susie Wiles, and Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard in particular, she's got a really good voice in this area. She's not a thoroughgoing conservative. For those of you who think they're conservative, politics. She is a woman of character who understands how critical it is to take the right steps in this. And Donald Trump's being very aggressive with Iran, and I think he's going to figure some things out. But we don't need to be expanding in war constantly. This goes all the way back to the theology of St. Augustine, who first posited what's called just war theory. And others after him, and a few before, have talked about this issue. The reason for war is to protect oneself from aggression. That all wars are bad. They're even actually all evil. But some wars are just to go into when it comes to protecting yourself. We do need to have a very strong military that can protect our people. But it's not, we've got to stop constantly throwing it elsewhere. This is a phenomenon, a post-World War II phenomenon, where we really feel like we've got to go running into countries because it seems the quick and easy fix just to destroy the government. Well, we've been, after doing such things, setting up horrible governments that are far worse than what the people had beforehand. And it's something that we need to pay attention to as Christians and as people who care about these public policies.
Well said. 1-800-347-9829. Your thoughts, your comments, your questions. 1-800-347-9829. Again, 1-800-347-9829. We're continuing to follow the breaking news out of Florida State University, where we have two shooters, one in custody, one was shot by police, and apparently going into the student union with a shotgun, handguns, and we'll keep you posted as that is a fluid story. Phone line's now open. Hello, I'm Brandon House. Is the government tracking you? Do they have access to all your data? Well, if you go to worldviewtalk.com, you'll find out about a cell phone company that, well, does not store your data. They don't do that. This is what they're known for. They don't store your data. You have privacy. You're not being tracked. That's why a lot of folks are turning to worldviewtalk.com. You'll find their prices are very competitive. All the details are there at worldviewtalk.com. Again, worldviewtalk.com. Oh, while you're there, not only do they have cell phones that aren't tracking you, you can find out about how to get a satellite phone. Should the whole system go down and you want to communicate with a family member or a loved one, you might want to have a satellite phone. Or how about their solar generators? They have great solar generators. Check them all out right now. Worldviewtalk.com, worldviewtalk.com. All right, welcome back. Glad you're with us. Worldview Radio, our website, worldviewradio.com. Stay tuned for Crosstalk with Jim Schneider coming up at the top of the hour. And by the way, I think it is this Friday, isn't it, Logan? Is it this Friday, Dalton? The Corrie Ten Boom, the reenactment. You guys might want to, if I were in town, I'd go see that.
No, next Saturday.
Is that this Friday night, guys? Next Saturday.
The 26th.
If that were the 26th of April, well, I should know.
You are watching Worldview too.
If I were in town, I'd go to that. That's for sure. That looks fascinating. So be sure to be checking that out for all of you in the listening audience. Can make it over to the Waukesha Expo Center for that. But Crosstalk, 2 p.m. Central, here on the VCY network. Now, Jim, let's go to the phone lines. 1-800-347-9829. People, we'd love to hear your thoughts, your comments, your questions. 1-800-347-9829. Jim, give us your website address again, please.
It's theconservativecaucus.org, T-H-E, theconservativecaucus.org.
Now, let me ask before we go to the phone lines. Having been the chief of staff for Thomas Massie, can you tell the audience why it's important that they do continue to make their voice known to the congressperson? Because I think a lot of times we think, oh, that's not going to do any good. Does it matter when we call, when we write a letter, when we send an email?
Well, yes, it really does. And it's not by the way, the final and best part of the process, but it's an important part of the one. The best part of the process is to get people unelected that are causing you problems. I mean, that's ultimately why we have elections. But what you do in situations like this, when people are on the fence, is you really show them that there is support for things that matter. And sometimes, listen, they know a lot of info's coming through, and there are organizations like mine that might be telling people to go contact them. But when they get these big, overwhelming responses, it does make a difference. I can think of many times, and not only Thomas Massey, I worked for Tim Huelskamp, former congressman in Kansas. When we would have the phone lines light up big, we noticed it. And if we knew it was a principle that either of these guys didn't, really hold on to, I mean, we might not respond to it right then, but you knew it would happen. You're not going to persuade everybody, but you can persuade some. These people are persuadable because they desire to get reelected, which is why the best security is to get involved at the ballot box. But definitely, it does move votes. It really can make a difference.
Let's go to the phone lines. Ray in Kansas, line 3. Hi, Ray.
Yeah, you were talking about liberty and the TSA. I had to say something about it. I've been trying for 20 years now to get something done about mailboxes. Where my license says my address is not where I'm living at. I'm in Kansas. My license says Quinlan, Texas. I moved it to Greenville. I still can't get a license. I'm one of those 7.2 million people that aren't looking for jobs because I already got one. I can't get to it because I can't get a mailbox at the post office. And that's liberty and the TSA from 9/11. They say for terrorists, I can't get a mailbox. And so I'm out here homeless and can't work. So I just wanted to say something about that as long as you're talking about liberties and how the government gives them to you and
that's
such that.
Very sad. Sorry to hear that, Ray. Let's go to Daniel, line 1. Daniel in Wisconsin. Hi, Daniel. Go ahead, Daniel.
Yes, thank you. I wondered if y'all would discuss if it's possible for President Trump to create a deep church and replace the deep state.
And what would the deep church do? What would they do, Daniel? What would you think they would accomplish?
No, we're not talking about trying to get a national religion. We're talking about putting Christians in the government in similar fashion how that they've put the liberals in there now.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I get it now. And of course, I'll let Jim speak for himself. I'm not saying that every person that goes into the administration has to be a Christian. Okay, I know that sometimes there's some people that are very qualified that are not Christians, but they're very qualified. I talked to a guy today who is former military, highly qualified. He should go into the Pentagon. I know he's even being talked to by some people at very high levels. He happens to be a national security expert and a Christian. But sometimes the experts are not Christians per se. But when you can find those that are, that's great. But what are your thoughts, Jim?
Yeah, I think it can always be good, but it's not necessarily the ultimate answer. It is a good thing, but it's not ultimately the answer. This is why we have a constitution, by the way. Everyone should do two things. Every person that cares about this country should do two things regularly. And you can piece it out over time, but you should do it. You should read the Constitution regularly, and you should read the Federalist Papers regularly. And I say that because I'm going to point to Federalist 51 right now. And James Madison, writing there, made the point that, if men were angels, they'd have no need for government. And if angels governed us, there would need to be no constraint upon them because the moral problem isn't there. But as I say many times, 6,000 years of recorded human history proves the radical corruption of mankind. And that is not limited to non-Christians. Christians, too. I mean, we see Christian moral failures all the time. You can have corruption in government, even amongst Christians, if there's not some legal restraint there. They must be restrained. Chuck Colson wrote a book, Kingdoms in Conflict, which everyone should read. It was a great book. In the beginning of that, he brought up the scenario, and this is back far enough when I think Pat Robertson actually was running for president at the time. But he mentioned that, well, what if we did elect a Christian president? What would that look like? And he posited the possibility that Christian president would have major failures in their judgment and activities. So, I mean, it's not an answer just to have a Christian in there. We need a lot of that, and we need people to understand that, but it really takes self-restraint. And the last thing I'll say here is John Adams said that our Constitution was created, in his opinion, for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate for the government of any other. We've got a lot of cleaning up in the church to do, too. There's a progressive wave in the church we need to be fighting against. And we need to hold our pastors accountable and our leaders to actually offering the gospel and moral, a clear moral understanding into society. We need it badly.
100% agree with that. Jim Paff checking in today. Jim, great having you with us. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you, Brandon.
You too, my friend. All right, folks, stay tuned for Crosstalk. But also remember, tomorrow's Good Friday. I'll not be here tomorrow. We'll run a best of. Because we'll be traveling back from the Midwest to the Mid-South, all right? So pray for our safe travels as we get back and get set up for broadcasting back in our home base, all right? Great again to see so many of you on Tuesday night. Thank you so much for being there. Take care.
This has been...
And that's our broadcast on those stations. We're back with WROS out of Jacksonville, Florida, and worldviewtube.com. I want to go back to our plans for our tour coming up the first week of May to Washington, D.C. Will you guys start praying about that for us? Again, we believe the Bible says the prayers of the righteous availeth much. So pray for safety in travel. Pray for our health. Pray for the health and alertness of our drivers. Then, of course, all of us on the camera crew and whatnot. Pray for divine appointments. Pray that the doors will be open. We still have some doors we're trying to get open. So pray for doors to be open that the Lord would want to have opened. And we can get into a few places I won't mention what they are, but we have a few places where we're trying to get in to film and to be a part of some historical sites. We're also working on some interviews. We're trying to get some key interviews with some people while we're there as well. Maybe pray about that those doors would open. But also, again, here's a great opportunity for you to be involved with us. So if you appreciate what we're doing, it's going to be very expensive to go out there, bring everybody with us, put them up in a hotel, bring all the coach that we need to carry all the equipment. We have to set up the studio out there in a hotel suite, just like we have here, so I can keep doing the Worldview Report and all these other things. I will miss some shows that week. I'll have some guys guest hosting on TV at night on a few nights, but we'll still be doing some of the broadcasts live from there. So it takes quite a bit to go do this. And if you appreciate the fact that we're willing to get out of the studio and go out there and do this and do a lot of great interviews and some historical sites, and then come back into our post-production room and produce some great television, historical television for you guys to view. And by the way, a lot of your kids and grandkids need to see this, okay? Maybe you guys can't go to Washington, D.C. Maybe it's not in the budget, or it's just not something you can do right now. Your kids and grandkids need to know about our nation's history and founding. They're getting lied to in most of our schools today. So it's important to have this good history for our kids, to have people to look up to. A lady came to our broadcast, or not our broadcast, but well, we were broadcasting, but she came to our rally the other night. She had a 9-year-old son. His name was Ezra. And they had driven all the way from Madison, Wisconsin. And she brought her daughter and her son to meet me. And this little boy's father had passed away 2 years ago. I'd never met this family that I know of. And she said to me, "My son really looks up to you. And his father has passed away, and he really looks up to you as a male figure." Wow, that's a heavy responsibility and burden, isn't it? And I got a little time to spend with him and sign a book to him, talk to him and encourage him. But it caused me to understand that that's exactly what so many of our young people need today. They need figures in media as well to follow, to learn from, to look up to point them to the things and say, go this direction, go this direction. These are the values. This is the worldview to follow. So we need to use our position to point young people and say, your parents are right when they try to tell you about our founding and the principles that have made our country free. And what happens if we aren't free? One of the places we're going to go to is the Anti-Communist Museum. Did you know there's an anti-communist museum? I didn't. Tamara Scott told us about it. So we started talking to their director at the Anti-Communist Museum. That's going to be important to go to. So if you appreciate all we're doing, we need your prayers, we need your support. Help us with our budget to do this and push out this kind of programming. Please consider going now to worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com, and making a contribution of any size. Would you do that? worldviewfoundation.com. You'll also find our mailing address. Remember, it costs us around $40,000 a month to keep this network going, and that does not include my compensation, my salary. And I have to make a living. I have bills just like you guys do, and my personal expenses, right? My family life. But that $40,000 a month is just our hard cost of keeping this network running. And we're pushing out free programming, and the bandwidth and storage bills is about $8,000 a month right in there. So again, our foundation helps us push out a lot of free educational ministry programming, and we need that support right now, please. Worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. Now, I hope some of you will join the vault. A lot of you have been joining the vault. That's another way you can support us, is through our vault. And we try to do special things for those who are vault members to say thank you for supporting us and gaining access to our 35 years of programming there. But when we go there to DC, we're going to include vault members in some special on-the-bus broadcast for vault members, traveling behind the scenes, seeing what we're doing. Some of it will be live. Some of it will be put up. We'll film it and put it up in the vault, a report, maybe something we filmed an hour ago, and then we pop it up in the vault. So we'll be doing a lot of special programming for vault members through that trip. Hope you'll join. worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault. Thanks for watching. May God save America. Take care.
You're watching Worldview Tube, built on the 35 years.